You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and it's taken 9 years, but the Shaver family has some resolution to the murder of their loved one, Michael, in 2015. But let's start at the beginning, because the beginning for Michael Shaver and Laurie Paddleford goes back to 7th grade in Lawrence, New York. The two met and immediately began a dating relationship, or as much of a dating relationship that can happen when you're 12 years old. After the two graduated high school, Michael trained and worked as a commercial pilot. But around 2009, Michael landed his dream job. He was hired as a mechanic at Disney World. This was a job filled with unique opportunities. So the married couple, Michael and Laurie, and their 2 kids, packed up and moved to Central Florida for Michael's new job. 5 years into their Florida adventure, things started to get a little rocky for the couple. The marriage was struggling, but despite that, the two purchased a medium-sized home on 5 acres of land in Central Florida in March of 2014. And this property is isolated. The 5 acres backs up to conservation land, and the property has a horse barn and pastures, lots of outdoor type things on the property. Now, 3 months after the purchase of the home, Mike texted a good friend writing that Laurie was filing for divorce. It kind of seemed like the marriage might be over. Then, 1 month later, in July of 2014, Michael and Laurie have a tussle. This tussle has varying ideas of how aggressive it might have been, but we know this. It was severe enough that a domestic violence charge is filed against Michael. 2 weeks after the argument, Laurie is driving with her 2 children when she crashes her truck into a tree, totaling the vehicle, but more importantly, she injured her 2 children. When questioned by police, Laurie said she had leaned over while driving to retrieve her purse, which had fallen on the floor. And again, there's kind of more dispute about the stories being provided. Some thought her story about the distracted driving was plausible, but others worried that Laurie's heavy drinking had finally taken its toll and the children were harmed by her negative behavior. Now, at this point, despite the threat of divorce, Michael has yet to leave the home and Laurie hasn't left the home either. And the two are entertaining the thought of relationships outside of their marriage. Then on September 4th, another argument explodes between Michael and Laurie. And according to an arrest affidavit, Laurie told authorities that the two began arguing over a home repair project. She said it escalated to a physical altercation when Michael grabbed her arm and shoved her into a wall. After the shove, she said Michael charged towards the bedroom where he retrieved a .40 caliber handgun that he keeps on the nightstand by the bed. According to Laurie, the two struggled over the gun, which resulted in Michael striking Laurie in the head with the weapon. Now, during the fight, Laurie said she shoved her hand into Michael's pocket, where she snatched the car keys, and then she loaded up the 2 kids in the car and headed to the Target in a neighboring city. Well, when the police report was filed, the deputy did note that she had cuts on her hands and arms. She also had bruising on her arms and her back, as well as one noticeable bruise on her left cheek. All right, so that's her story in the police report. When Michael was questioned, he told deputies that the argument, quote, turned violent so fast. He said it was so fast he couldn't remember who physically struck first, him or her. He did admit to grabbing his wife in an attempt to calm her down. He told deputies that Laurie had thrown a vase of flowers at him and that it shattered against the sliding glass door. He also had kind of a slightly different story about the handgun. He said Laurie had been the one who retrieved a .38 caliber handgun out of the nightstand and yelled at him that she was going to, quote, end it now. He said he wrestled the gun from her, and when he secured the firearm, he emptied the gun of the bullets. He said he chased after her and cornered her in the living room, where she then grabbed the gun from him and smacked him on the head with the pistol. All right, the deputy in his report did note that Michael had a gash on his head. And the deputy had to make a call in this domestic dispute case. So his call was that Michael was the primary aggressor. So he was the one arrested. However, his charges were dropped when he entered a treatment program. Michael's sister came to his defense, and in a Facebook post, she wrote the following about the domestic violence dispute. Her post reads, "Along with the domestic violence charges, Laurie took off with the kids, driving drunk, while Michael waited at his home for the police. They were both going to be arrested, so children would have been placed with CPS. So Michael told police to just take him instead." Well, even though law enforcement and now the courts were involved, Michael and Laurie get into it again just 10 days later. But Laurie drops those charges after a couple of weeks. One thing's clear. This relationship is toxic. But here's where it's about to get strange. Because as 2015 rolls around, Michael and Laurie start behaving a little differently. By May, Michael completes his court-appointed program and all of his charges are removed. Also, in May of 2015, a neighbor spots Michael and Laurie target shooting in their backyard together. So maybe the relationship is improving. Or maybe not. Because in late summer of 2015, Michael contacts authorities and inquires about how he can prevent his wife from taking their 2 kids to New York to visit family. He allegedly was concerned about his kids leaving the state. Well, nothing comes of that phone call, and the visit does seem to have happened. Then on October 11th of 2015, Michael and his friend Scott go four-wheeling together. From that encounter, there didn't seem to be any red flags. Scott said everything was going good. Now, Michael is still showing up for work every day, even though he isn't out and about as much. 1 month later, on November 7th, Michael and Laurie and the kids join one of Michael's coworkers and their family at a trade show in Fort Meade, Florida. The next day, Michael clocks in for work for the last time. This becomes such a pivotal date. We're early November of 2015. Now, Michael, he is a no-show for his next scheduled shift. And then one day after that, he or someone using his phone sends a text message to his boss saying, "I quit. Don't contact me. You can keep all of my tools." All right, all I know is my hubby is not giving up his tools. And I think I can speak for most men. They wouldn't give up their tools when it's the way that they make a living. For me, there's red flags all over the place. Well, 3 weeks later, one of Michael's former coworkers tries to stop by the house. Laurie answered the door and said Mike wasn't there. But then out of left field, Laurie tries to sell the former coworker Michael's guns. All right, first you got his tools and then his guns. For the next 5 months, casual friends of Michael's tried to check in with him via his cell phone. And those friends do occasionally get a reply from that phone. But there's more red flags. One friend in particular tried to really press Michael through text messages about why he was MIA for the last 5 months. In response to that, someone uses Michael's cell phone to send the following response. "I'm good, okay? I just don't feel like talking to anyone now. Dealing with a lot of shit right now." Okay, well, what's Laurie up to while Michael is, quote, dealing with a lot of shiz? She seems to be dating and eventually marrying a man named Travis Filmer. Travis and Laurie met in the summer of 2016, roughly 6 to 7 months after Michael left his tools at Disney World and was all of a sudden not using his guns anymore. So follow me here. Laurie's dating Travis. Michael is supposedly AWOL. And then all of a sudden, Michael or someone else uses a credit card issued in only his name. For 3 weeks in August of 2016, 9 months after Michael didn't show for work, a balance of just over $3,000 is accrued on that credit card, and no one pays it back. It goes completely ignored. So by November of 2016, Discover Bank is filing suit against Michael. And if you file a suit, then papers must be delivered to Michael about that suit. But Michael can't be found. When a process server shows up at Laurie and Michael's home, he honks at the locked gate, but no one comes out of the house. So what does he do? He leaves a card, and he decided he would try later to serve the papers. A few days went by, and the process server then gets a voicemail from Lori. She tells him in the message that Michael doesn't live at the residence and that he hasn't lived there since 2014 when he was arrested for battery with a firearm. Okay, that was a year earlier. His friend said he lived there in 2015 when they went four-wheeling. Lori then closes the voice message with the idea that she has no way to find Michael and doesn't know where he is living. Now, Travis and Lori are still dating, and in December of 2016, they marry. That's roughly a year after Michael apparently quit his job. And they also marry without filing for divorce from Michael. As 2017 moves forward, we kind of get glimpses through social media of Lori and Travis's new life. In May, Travis posts a picture of Lori and him praying together over a Bible. And then in June of 2017, Travis's mom posts a photo from the couple's wedding. She's using that photo to congratulate the two on the baby that will be born in early 2018. Yep, you heard that right. Lori's pregnant. Still, Michael is nowhere to be found until someone updates Michael's Facebook page on November 14th of 2017, 2 years since he left his job. 2 months later, there's more activity on Michael's social media. This time, it's a new profile pic. Finally, in early 2018, Michael's good friend Scott, okay, remember he's the one that went four-wheeling. Well, he contacts Michael's sister, where through their conversation, they figure out that neither has seen Michael in person or heard his voice for more than 2 years. Now, people had stopped by the house, but they were always told Michael wasn't there. And these people had received vague text messages from Michael's phone. And then there's the couple of times his Facebook is updated. But that's it. Scott has now hit full freakout mode, and he calls the police reporting his friend, 36-year-old Michael Shaver, as a missing person. Following up with a wellness check request, deputies went to the Shaver home. Lori was there, and at first, she invited the deputies into her home. She was allegedly cooperative, but claimed she had no idea where Michael was and that she hadn't seen him since 2015. Then, after a few more questions, she invites the deputies to leave because the cooperation seems to be over as they're walking around the property. She tells them she will no longer talk with them and that they need to contact her lawyer. So why the change in behavior by Lori? Deputies said she became very edgy when they requested to search the exterior of the property, specifically the backyard and the area near a fire pit and a concrete slab. That's when she shut everything down and asked for her counsel. Lori's behavior aside, deputies were already suspicious because that concrete slab had been poured with reckless craftsmanship. One deputy referred to it as shoddy work. And the slab had begun to kind of sink in the middle, which apparently led to someone pouring more concrete over the depressed portion of the slab. Law enforcement had seen enough, and in early March of 2018, armed with search warrants, they returned to the Shaver property. Cadaver dogs alerted twice in the backyard, and when a concrete slab was overturned, a human upper arm bone was uncovered. The next day, as the acres were searched, articles of clothing were dug up, and more human remains were unearthed. But no arrests happened immediately because it took months for the remains to be identified as those of Michael Shaver. While those remains were being identified, Lori and Travis move out of the Shaver home, and in a pretty heartless act, they leave their pet pig behind to fend for itself. Now, once those remains were identified as those of Michael Shaver, Lori was arrested. And you guys, I feel like I say this all the time. Due to COVID and the legal tape, it has taken 6 years for Lori to finally be tried in front of a jury of 6 of her peers for Michael's murder. All right, during the last 6 years, she's been free on bond. As of last week, we now finally have a conclusion to that trial. But before we get to that, what kind of defense did Lori mount? It's clear what prosecutors believe she did. In a tumultuous marriage, she shot Michael, killing him and then burying him in the backyard of the home. Then she covered up that burial with concrete slabs And also, she impersonated Michael for the next 3 years before his remains were uncovered. Seems cut and dry, right? But Laurie said that's not how it went down. According to WESH, Laurie claimed it was her daughter that shot Michael. And get this, her daughter backed her up on that claim. The daughter said that she witnessed an argument between her parents that centered around her mother's potential extramarital relationship, and that the daughter said her dad was standing over her mother, kicking her repeatedly. The daughter then said she retrieved a gun from the nightstand and shot her father as he was standing over her mother. All right, Laurie also added to that story saying that her ex-boyfriend Jeremy was there for the fight and for the gunshot, and that he was the one that delivered another fatal gunshot to Michael when he intervened. And she wasn't done implicating Jeremy. Laurie also said he was the one who buried Michael in the graves in the backyard. All right, so looking at this with no opinion attached, I can see how a jury could look at spousal abuse and maybe justify the killing of Michael in a potential self-defense claim. But what about the burying of the body and going on to marry someone else? And then there's the time frame discrepancy. Both Laurie and her daughter couldn't quite explain the time frame. Okay, remember, Michael texted his work in November of 2015, yet both Laurie and her daughter said he wasn't killed until May of 2016. Where was he hiding out for 6 months? And why wasn't he reaching out to friends? Well, the New York Post reported that during the cross-examination of the daughter, jurors avoided eye contact with the 16-year-old, who would have been about 8 years old when the murder happened. And no matter the outcome of the trial, I just have to say it breaks my heart that a young girl has been shouldering this for almost 9 years. No child deserves that. Well, ultimately, 41-year-old Laurie Shaver was found guilty earlier this month of shooting her husband and burying his body in 2015. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours and returned with the guilty of second-degree murder verdict. Laurie has been remanded to custody in the Lake County Sheriff's Office. Sentencing has been tentatively scheduled for November 25th. In Florida, the judge completes a pre-sentence investigation before handing down his sentence ruling. So she could face a minimum of 25 years in prison, but she also could be sentenced to life in prison. Following the verdict, Michael's sister, who helped discover that Michael was missing, well, she said her only emotion was elation, and she expressed that the verdict was a long time coming. But when I mention his sister, I might have stirred a thought with you. Why did it take 3 years for everyone to notice they hadn't physically seen or heard him? Michael's sister told the Orlando Sentinel that she purposely didn't call the authorities. She said she felt that her and others could find Michael on their own. She said they were trying to respect Michael since he was going through a difficult time in his marriage. She wanted those questioning her actions to understand she knew Michael was married to a, quote, psychopath, and that she wanted to allow him the space to figure out his marriage and his life. Michael's brother said the following about him in a Facebook post. Michael's life, his family, his friends, and his kids were ripped away from him, and nothing can truly correct that. He was a kind, funny, and loving guy. He loved his kids more than anything. We will never get to see the kind of man that he would have become with time, but we know with confidence that he would have continued to make a wonderful impact on the lives he surrounded himself with. While nothing can ever fill the void left by Mike, we'll continue to honor his memory, his humor, and his love. Finally, I can say, rest in peace, Michael. I want to leave you with this, and it's a quick reminder because I've told you this before. You can visit thehotline.org. Again, it's thehotline.org if you or someone you care about is experiencing domestic violence. Well, something fishy is going on in New Jersey, and now someone might have been snagged for the smelly crime. Here's what happened on September 5th. A semi-truck driver was transporting his load of 500,000 shrimp to a Costco in Monroe Township, New Jersey. As per his usual delivery practice, the driver had rented a parking space for his tractor trailer on Smalley Avenue. When he went back in the early morning hours to attach his tractor trailer and deliver the over $300,000 worth of shrimp to Costco, the trailer was gone. But it wasn't just the tractor trailer filled with shrimp that was stolen or damaged. 4 other shipping containers in the warehouse parking area were also broken into. Weirdly, though, it doesn't seem that any items were taken from the other 4 containers. Just the $50,000 trailer and the 500,000 shrimp. They were poof, gone. The catch that got away. Well, police, they eventually found the shrimp about 16 miles away in Perth Amboy. Detectives are being pretty tight-lipped about why the shrimp were stolen and how many were missing once the trailer was found. And this might seem funny, but in this economy, the publication Seafood Source is reporting that there's been an uptick in the theft of seafood-related items. Large quantities of crab meat worth $42,000 were stolen from a parked refrigerator truck in September. The driver awoke to thieves ransacking his trailer. Then on August 8th, $10,000 worth of tuna was stolen from a truck parked in a warehouse yard in Philadelphia. And now I can ask the question, where's the beef, and actually get an answer. Because in July, also in Philadelphia, $15,000 worth of beef was stolen from a refrigerated truck. And working back in time this summer, in late April, $30,000 worth of crab meat was stolen from a Northeast Philadelphia Walmart when thieves snagged a trailer waiting to deliver to the superstore. Holy cow, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love and also the city of stolen meat. Now cops have lured in and snagged some criminals in an operation dubbed Operation Beef Bandit. 23-year-old Sean Coleman, 37-year-old Salahuddin Reddy, 31-year-old Hanif Tucker, and 26-year-old Rashawn Clark Reddy were all arrested on Friday when they were caught trying to steal packaged meat from a parked tractor trailer stopped at a service area along the New Jersey Turnpike. Now, when that sting went down, Tucker, that's one of the arrested guys, well, he was taken in by authorities immediately. And Coleman, he was arrested after a brief foot pursuit. The other 2 players, Reddy and Reddy, which kind of sounds like the title to a Netflix dramedy, well, they rammed a stolen car into an unmarked police car before they were arrested. But here's the problem. The arrest of those 4 men in the Operation Beef Bandit, well, that was specific to the New Jersey Turnpike, so they might not be connected to any of the other thefts I've included in this story. Authorities are calling the arrest of the 4 the beginning of breaking up a meat theft ring that dates back years. So I started looking. Is this happening in other parts of the United States, or is it just New Jersey and Philadelphia? Well, last year, 3 men from Florida entered guilty pleas for their involvement in an organized criminal enterprise that carried out frozen beef and pork thefts from packing plants across the Midwest. Their haul totaled about $9 million in losses for various companies. Now, the men's guilty pleas in that Florida case, that landed them in prison about 1.5 years each. It was pretty much the same gig, stealing tractor trailers filled with beef and pork. But then I stumbled across this. In March, alcohol was the target, specifically bourbon. Same story though. The driver was asleep in the cab and thieves broke into the trailer and made off with bourbon. And then in April, thieves broke into a trailer containing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of dimes. That trailer was parked in a Walmart parking lot when 2 million dimes worth $200,000 were nabbed and millions of dimes were left littering the parking lot. Except this time, the driver was from Philadelphia and he had gone home to catch a few Z's before he started transporting the load of dimes to Florida the next morning. So how exactly do you cash in all those dimes you've stolen? Do you show up at like the Cheesecake Factory and pay in dimes? Who knows, but I'll let you know if the thefts I've started this story with, if they continue, and if we find any of the thieves who have done the stealing of meat. And this next crime update from Clemson University. Please, if you know any young women who are new to the college scene, tell them this story as a cautionary tale, because on September 10th, 57-year-old registered sex offender Daryl Scott Brooks was just wandering outside of an apartment complex near Clemson University. That's the first red flag. He looks like an old dude, yet he's around a college campus. And that's coming from a 51-year-old. This guy looks very old. Daryl approached a young college-aged female and asked her for a ride, saying his car was broken down and he needed to get back to the car. It's not even that great of a story. But the female agreed and drove Daryl about 13 minutes south of the university. That's when Daryl allegedly forced the student to pull over into a parking lot of a Baptist church. At knife point, he tried to pin the female down. This is according to the sheriff's department. But this girl, she did do something so helpful. Her loud screaming caused a passing motorist to stop and interrupt the attack. The female squirmed her way out of the white Audi Q5 and she escaped. Daryl hightailed it out of there in her car, and sheriff's deputies were warned about the stolen Audi and also the alleged attack on the female. So just a few short hours later, Daryl was spotted. A deputy attempted to pull him over, but he sped off. The ensuing high-speed chase reached speeds of over 100 miles per hour. Daryl crashed the car and then fled on foot. But he's older, remember? And as the foot chase ascended a hilly area, younger deputies caught the sex offender. He's been charged with kidnapping, grand larceny assault, with the intent to commit sexual assault, and other charges. But good old Daryl is familiar with prison, so if convicted, he knows what's ahead of him because Daryl had just been released this spring from prison. He's done this sort of thing before. In 2003, he was convicted of kidnapping, burglary, and sexually assaulting a young adult woman in her home. In that crime, he also held the female by knife point, except he kept her captive for 15 hours. Well, Clemson University says they are providing Daryl's newest victim with counseling, and maybe we can do our parts. Make sure you talk to young women about being safe out there in this world. And finally, as I was preparing for this episode, Sean P. Diddy Combs was appearing in a New York City court facing federal sex crime charges, and they were also determining his bail situation. Now, I've brought you several updates on P. Diddy, from the raid on his homes to the many, many civil suits filed against him, and also the shocking video of him caught in an altercation with his girlfriend Cassie in a hotel hallway. But these federal charges, they're hefty. Money is not going to buy his way out of this one if he's found guilty. So here's what's happening. On Monday, P. Diddy was arrested by federal agents for coercing multiple women into performing elaborate and produced sex performances. He called these performances freak-offs. In addition to orchestrating and directing the freak-offs, the music mogul would record the gatherings and pleasure himself while the whole event is unfolding. At least that's what the 14-page indictment alleges. At the arraignment on Tuesday, P. Diddy was remanded into custody without bail. He is appealing that decision in court as I record this episode. His attorney told the judge in a letter that his client, quote, is eminently trustworthy and that he should be released on a $50 million bond. P. Diddy's attorney also said he would limit his interaction with females and that his mother, sister, and adult sons would aid in his restrictions. He did plead not guilty at his original arraignment. Now let's get back to the indictment. According to that indictment, P. Diddy would lure victims into these freak-offs under the pretense of a romantic relationship. He then would coerce them into participating. These freak-offs were alleged to last several days. IV treatments were available for the participants because the orchestrated scripts would be so taxing. During that FBI raid that I mentioned, drugs were seized that were allegedly used in the freak-offs. Also seized, over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. All right, I'll keep you updated on his bail situation and also on the charges as they roll forward. All right, you guys, that's your Thursday episode of Rise in Crime. Thanks for joining me here on this podcast. I love being a part of your day. I say it all the time. It's truly so fun for me to build this community and to interact with you. If you're loving the content, please share this show with a friend. And here at Oh No Media, we love 5-star reviews and positive comments. You can like and follow us on all of our social media and our YouTube accounts. That's Into the Dark, Murder with My Husband, and Rise in Crime. Join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.